thought that he would keep it. The moon was shining. Lloyd looked at his knight. He said that he was scared from the very beginning to the end. The hero raised his eyebrows and asked what kind of nonsense he was talking. The boy looked down and said that as a knight guarding the young master, he forgot about his duties and rushed towards the Mega Titan and was also disappointed that the young master did not support him. He said that he wanted to trust the young master. After all, it was always like that. The blue-haired man lowered his gaze and said that with weak willpower and lack of strength. He looked at the fire and said that with neglecting his duties, he was completely unsuitable for the role of a knight. Lloyd smiled and said that everything he just said was completely wrong. He looked at him and said that despite this, he still had to take a 6-month pay cut. Xavier looked at him. The guys sat silently by the fire. The blue-haired one looked up and said 3 months. The hero asked if he really thought he would give in. He answered no. The brunette asked why ask then. The knight looked at the fire and said that he swears as the young master's companion to never neglect his duties again. The hero looked at him and asked if he really thinks he will believe him while he is just a stick in the fire. He answered that he shouldn't believe him, but he still keeps his oath. Xavier, without looking up, said that he already knows that the master has reached the level of 3 rings. He needs to catch up with him quickly if he wants to continue to be his knight, so he must become a sword master by the end of the year. Lloyd smiled and asked what kind of tone it was, as if he was saying that he was going to lose 5 kilograms by the end of the year. He replied that it was just thinking out loud. The guys sat in silence. The hero picked up a stick and told them to listen to him. He began to draw in the sand and said that each person has a limit to how much they can expand the heart of fashion. Theoretically, he will not be able to grow further even if he trains for 100 years, since it is generally possible to become a sword master. In his opinion, the boundless ocean of mana is not so easy to polish. Xavier erased his drawing. He looked at it and said that this time he will do without the help of the master. He thought that he will not rely on him anymore. Kale flew forward with his sword at the ready. Xavier ran towards him and thought that this time he will become a sword master using only his own strength. The man pierced him with a sword. Purple energy emanated from the sword. Kale frowned and said that he never ceased to amaze him. Any other body would have been shattered into pieces after meeting his aura sword. He held the sword and asked if he had strengthened his body by combining all his mana. If that were possible, he would have admired his little tricks. The man's expression darkened and said that he should die now. Xavier's body was engulfed in flames. The boy screamed. Kale looked at his hand in shock. The knight grabbed his opponent's hand. The man looked at him and said that he was crazy. What was he doing? The blue-haired man gritted his teeth and thought that the mana emitted by his aura sword was tearing him into pieces. He thought that he should let it pass through the sword. The boy held the man's hand and thought that he would pass the mana to his hand. Kale gritted his teeth. The knight thought that he would pass the mana then to his heart. The mana fire was burning. Kale lifted the guy on the sword and screamed, and threw him away. Xavier was printed into the wall. He fell. The guy was lying on the floor unconscious. The man looked at him. He came closer and thought that he could not feel his breath and the flow of mana. Kale turned away and thought that he had wasted too much time, and now it was time to go for the queen's head. Xavier said that now he understands. He stood up. The blonde turned around. The knight said that now he understands what kind of mana the master of the sword is. He raised the sword. Kale widened his eyes and thought, is this really an aura sword? He had never seen anything like it. The guy swung the sword. In his hands was a huge sword. He shot his mana. Kale gritted his teeth. He swung the sword. Xavier's mana was stronger than his. Kale dodged the blow. He frowned. His hand was cut off. It fell far from him. The man fell to the floor and screamed. The guards ran to him. They looked up. Xavier looked at them and said that who would like to meet the sword master. The woman called Lloyd. She held his hand and asked him to open his eyes. She asked if he had the ability to absorb mana, then he could absorb her mana. Alicia frowned and thought that they can't afford to lose a talented person. He must wake up. Lloyd opened his eyes. A system window appeared that he survived the deadly poison. A new skill option for the Heart of Mana was opened. A system window appeared that he is now resistant to all poisons. When the skill is activated in a state of fatigue, mana begins to be absorbed from the surrounding environment. Lloyd smiled and thought that these are really useful skills. The queen frowned. She punched the guy with her fist. He looked at her in shock. Alicia frowned. The brunette looked at her and asked why she did that. She replied that she didn't know. It was all in his face. The guy asked what was wrong with his face. Alicia looked at him and asked if he was feeling better, if he could get up on his own. The hero was lying on the floor. He said that his legs were shaking a little. He thought that he needed to hurry up and help Xavier. He thought that now that he had the skill of absorbing mana from the environment, when he was tired, he had no other choice but to test it. Lloyd began to absorb mana. 3 rings were spinning around his heart. His heart was increasingly filled with mana. He prepared for a quick, powerful fight. Alicia pulled away and screamed what was happening. Mana was entering the boy's body. The energy of objects and walls was being absorbed. Shadows began to advance. Mana was being absorbed throughout the room. The queen raised her hand and thought, what a huge absorption capacity he has. At this rate, all her mana will be depleted. She screamed at him to become. Lloyd lay with his eyes closed. The woman thought, can't he hear her? She pursed her lips and thought that he saved her life. The queen knelt down and thought that he could take her mana until his heart was full, and with this power he would help his knight. Lloyd continued to absorb mana. The woman closed her eyes. The guy raised his chin. Mana from all over the room was flowing to him. He opened his eyes wide. The queen lowered her head. A system window appeared. That yes, as the mana heart increased to the level of a minor sword specialist, he now has a new option available. For 60 seconds his berserker mode will be available, which allows you to move towards a given target. In the state mode, strength, endurance and reflexes increase by 200%. The skill is available only once a day. Lloyd's eyes widened in surprise. He stood up and thought that his body felt so weightless, as if he had been properly recharged. The boy frowned and remembered Xavier. He thought that he must be fighting the sword master one-on-one now. The hero turned and addressed the queen, suddenly screamed in surprise. He looked around and thought, what happened to her? Was she really that affected by the skill? The boy recoiled when the woman said that she would like to know more later. She frowned and said that the main thing now was to stop Kale. Would he be able to carry her? Lloyd threw his jacket over her and said that he was at her service. He thought that the queen was something special. It didn't matter what people would say after that. The boy stood up and said that they were ready. He ran down the corridor with all his might and thought that Xavier had to hold on. His master was rushing to his aid. The queen opened her eyes and thought that Xavier was truly a genius at mana manipulation. However, it was not enough to defeat the sword master Kale alone. She closed her eyes and thought that she should now save up some mana. What she was currently able to produce was only a third of her strength. Lloyd turned the corner. He saw Xavier standing in front of the army. The brunette opened his eyes and called out to him. He thought, is that really an aura sword in his hands? Kale was lying on the floor. The hero thought he had succeeded. Alicia stepped forward and told them to lay down their weapons immediately. The guards looked at her. The woman said that the only one who tried to kill the queen was Kale, and these two young men dared to take a risk and save her life. Lloyd scratched his head and thought that it was because she was a solvent customer. The queen pointed to the young men and told them to show them their respect and be polite to their heroes. The guards stood at attention. Alicia walked past the rows of soldiers and said that everyone who is present at the banquet today will be questioned. These are just precautions, so she asks for cooperation. The brunette looked at the knight and asked, is he really a sword master now? He answered positively. The heroes asked why he was talking about it so casually. He answered, what else did he expect from him? Xavier turned away and said that from now on, more dangerous trials can await him, and this is the only way to fulfill his mission as a protector. Lloyd looked at him in shock and thought that he was insanely glad that he was okay. He smiled and said that he could say whatever he wanted. He thought that he was just glad that everything was okay. A system window appeared, that today he was able to become part of another grand event. The incredible power of his achievements allowed him to unlock hidden skills. Lloyd looked at the system window in shock and thought what kind of thing they would give him today. A system window appeared, that the reward system was being activated. The brunette looked at the notification. It said that titles were created for his achievements. Each title gives him a bonus skill. Also, every month at midnight on the full moon they give him a certain amount of title points. He thought, what kind of nonsense is this? There should be a defender of Cremo or a hero of Magentano. Why couldn't they come up with something cool? Lloyd looked at the notification, which said that the title name was invented in accordance with his image. He wondered if it was possible to change them. The hero scratched his cheek and thought that it was good that, as he says, he gets titles, he can develop a skill. A system window appeared, that the title was well done. The lobster Cremo, he gets a gift effect. The guy frowned and thought, could this be some kind of bug? Do all titles have their own effect? He thought, what are these CP points for? The system will not tell him even if he asks. A system window appeared, that he was going to tell him, but now he won't. The hero asked to tell. He is very sorry. The system window